She taught yoga under the Texas sun, preaching balance, calm, and inner peace. Her name was Chase Hartley, and on the surface, she lived by every word she taught. But behind the deep breaths and downward dogs was a storm brewing, a betrayal too painful to ignore, a love triangle spinning out of control. When a cycling event brought her boyfriend face to face with his ex, Chase didn't confront them. She waited, she watched, and then she struck. This isn't just a story about jealousy. It's about obsession, deception, and a woman who is willing to destroy everything, including herself, to get revenge. From Austin, Texas to the coast of Costa Rica, this is the true story of how a yoga teacher became the target of an international manhunt. Welcome to Vic's Crime Stories, and today we dive into the chilling case of Chase Hartley, the yoga teacher who killed for love. Chase Hartley believed in balance, in breath work, in centering the mind. Her days started early, rolled out on a yoga mat in a warm Austin studio, the air thick with incense and quiet intentions. Her students admired her, some even envied her. Calm, poised, always with the right word at the right moment. She was the kind of person who made you feel safe just by standing near her. That's what made everything that followed so hard to believe. Then there was Colin Raye, a bullet on two wheels. Sponsored by Red Bull, he spent most of his time slicing through the wind, chasing titles, speed, and something else only he understood. Colin had a body carved by motion and a schedule that didn't slow down for anyone. Racing tours, training camps, appearances. For most women, he'd have been untouchable. For Chase, he was irresistible. Their connection? Fast, furious, deep enough to feel like love, but often too wild to last. They broke up. They made up. They argued hard and made up harder. It was the kind of relationship that made friends shake their heads, but neither of them could seem to walk away for good. Chase, for all her training and stillness, had a restless mind when it came to Colin. At first, it was small things, missed calls, distracted glances, the way he held his phone just a little too close to his chest when reading messages. Then came the night it happened. She waited until he fell asleep. Quietly, carefully, she picked up his phone, slid her thumb across the screen, and stepped into the digital world he kept hidden from her. Her breath caught as she scrolled. There was messages to a name she didn't want to see. Mo Brennan. Mo wasn't just anyone. She was a ghost from Colin's past, and worse, a fellow professional cyclist. A world Chase never truly belonged to. The texts weren't just casual. There were too many, too often, too familiar. Chase read them all. Every emoji, every can't wait to see you. Her hands trembled, but she didn't wake him. She didn't scream. She didn't even cry. She blocked Mo's number right then and there. Deleted the thread. Cleared the call log. Like wiping a board clean. She told herself this was control. That she was putting things right again. That maybe Colin just needed help staying on the right path. And for a while, it worked. Things got better. Or they looked like they did. Colin was more present. More attentive. He didn't notice Mo's silence. Or maybe he did, and he didn't care. Chase started smiling more. Teaching more. Posting those breezy yoga reels that made her look like the picture of peace. But deep down, something in her had shifted. Because once you see the truth on someone's phone, you never really unsee it. At first, Chase told herself it was over. That whatever she'd seen in Colin's phone that night had been a one-time slip. A fluke. A leftover thread from a past he hadn't quite cut loose from. She gave herself permission to breathe again. To believe. But belief has a shelf life, and Colin was unknowingly draining it every day. It started with the little things again. Too many cycling trips. Too many unexplained delays. He'd leave his phone turned face down. Take calls outside. Smile at texts, but never say from who. He wasn't acting like someone who had nothing to hide. Chase didn't ask questions. She watched instead. Quiet. Careful. Waiting. When a moment came, it felt too easy. He'd left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, screen glowing. She picked it up slowly, her heart beating faster with every step toward truth. She didn't even need to scroll far. The messages were recent. Frequent. They weren't from Mo anymore. They were from someone named Delivery Guy. And suddenly, the calm she had worked so hard to rebuild shattered again. There were no packages, no drop-offs, no receipts, just late-night check-ins, laughter typed out in short sentences, and GPS tags that told their own story. The photos, the videos, the shared playlists. It wasn't innocent. It wasn't old. This wasn't a memory being replayed. This was a relationship. Active, ongoing, hidden. And the name he chose to hide her under? It was almost insulting. She stared at the name for a long time, the silence around her stretching too far. Then she set the phone down, walked out of the room, and smiled at Colin as if nothing had changed. Because now, Chase had something she didn't have the first time. Certainty. And a plan. She kept playing the part. The supportive girlfriend. The Zen instructor. The calm. She asked about his training, wished him luck, made breakfast, rubbed his sore legs after long rides. All the while, she tracked every move he made through the fitness app he used to log his cycling routes. It gave her access to his times, his distances, even his pit stops. He had no idea. Then came the announcement, the one Colin had been buzzing about for weeks. A major cycling event hosted in Texas, just a few hours from Austin. Big names, Red Bull promotion, hundreds of athletes attending. He was excited. He said it would be intense, exhausting, a test of his limits. Chase smiled, nodded, said she was proud of him. What she didn't say was that she already knew Mo Brennan would be there. She saw it on the event's social media pages. She found Mo's name listed under pro attendee registrants. And just like that, the picture came into focus. All of it. The messages, the secrecy, the sudden need to train out of town. It wasn't just a race. It was a reunion, one that neither of them expected Chase to know about. She didn't fight. She didn't warn. She let him go. On the day of the event, she watched his route live through the app. Every mile, every stop. She had become an expert in digital stalking. Not proud of it, just efficient. When the race wrapped, he didn't come home right away. The app showed him taking a detour. Then he stopped for nearly 2 hours at a recreational center near the river. That was the first red flag. Not because of the location, but because of what she'd seen Mo post on Instagram just hours earlier. A selfie in a swimsuit with that same river in the background. Later, Colin's route took him to a quiet Italian restaurant on the edge of town. Another pause. 90 minutes. The app didn't show what was ordered or how long they lingered over dessert. But Chase didn't need those details. Her mind filled in the rest. Then came the final stop, a small house on a street she didn't recognize. His location stayed fixed there for about 20 minutes before it began to move again. Heading home, Chase wrote down the address. Slowly, carefully. She knew that street now, knew who lived there. It was a relative of Mo's. She checked it against public records later that night, just to be sure. She had the name. She had the location. She had the timeline. And still, she didn't say a word to Colin. She greeted him with a kiss when he came home, listened to his stories about the race, nodded in the right places, pretended not to smell the perfume on his clothes that wasn't hers. She didn't confront him, didn't cry, didn't even blink. She simply waited for him to fall asleep. Because Chase wasn't just collecting information anymore. She was waiting for the right moment to use it. And that moment was coming faster than anyone realized. That night, as Colin slept soundly beside her, she stared at the address one more time. The same house where he dropped Mo off just hours earlier. The same place she had now pinned on her phone, circled on a paper map, and burned into her memory. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do yet, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let this end quietly. It was close to midnight when Chase made her move. No hesitation, no second thoughts. She knew where the house was, how long it took to get there, and what the layout looked like from the pictures Mo had once posted online. A birthday gathering, balloons, family, that hallway wallpaper. Those posts had since been deleted, but not before Chase had saved them. She parked a few streets over, walked the rest of the way in silence. Hoodie up, gloves on. She didn't bring a phone. No purse. No identifying anything. Just a blade tucked inside her sleeve and an intention she'd rehearsed in her mind too many times to count. The house was dark, quiet. No barking dogs. No lights through the blinds. She slipped through the side entrance, where the gate creaked slightly but didn't latch. A lucky detail. The back door wasn't locked. That part surprised her. But then again, small towns forget sometimes that danger doesn't always knock. Inside, she moved slow, steady, her breathing low, her steps measured. She didn't know exactly where Mo would be, but she felt her presence, like heat from another room. She passed the kitchen, the living room, that old photo wall she remembered from the pictures. Then came the bathroom light, a dim glow under the door. She stood in front of it for a full second, maybe two, long enough to hear the sound of water running. Mo was inside, alone, vulnerable. When the door opened, it happened fast. Mo didn't scream. She froze, eyes wide. The towel slipped from her hand, and then just silence. Chase stepped forward and said nothing. The moment stretched. Mo's voice finally broke it, a whisper that tried to sound firm but came out shaky. "What are you doing here?" But Chase didn't answer. She just stepped closer and closer. The blade slid from her sleeve with a soft hiss of metal against fabric. Rage doesn't always explode. Sometimes it focuses, sharpens, clears away everything else. She struck quickly, once, then again. Mo stumbled backward, hitting the wall with a soft thud, hands up, confused, terrified. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. A third blow silenced them. It was over within seconds. Mo collapsed by the sink, her breath slipping away on a bathroom floor lined with seafoam green tiles. Chase stood over her for a moment, just stood there, breathing heavily now, watching the life drain from someone she had once viewed as competition, rival, threat, and now nothing. She didn't panic. She didn't scream. She turned around, wiped the blade clean with a towel, and walked out the same way she came in. An hour later, Mo's relative returned from a late-night shift at the diner. The moment they opened the front door, something felt off. The air was heavy. The lights were still off, but the faint smell of something metallic clung to the hallway. Then the scream. The call to 911 came seconds after that. A young woman found in her own home. No sign of forced entry. No robbery. Just violence. Cold. Quick. Personal. The police moved fast. Secured the area. Started their canvass. One by one, they knocked on doors. One neighbor remembered seeing a car they didn't recognize parked 2 streets down. It was there before midnight. Gone shortly after. Not a make they could name. Not a license plate they could read. Just a shape in the shadows. That's all they had. Inside the house, detectives examined the scene. No broken glass. No signs of struggle beyond the bathroom. Just that towel on the floor and a question no one could yet answer. Who hated Mo Brennan enough to walk into that house and end her life? The answer wasn't obvious, because Chase had vanished, and no one, not Colin, not the family, not even those closest to her, had the slightest clue where she had gone. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. They didn't catch her right away. In fact, her name didn't even come up in the investigation at first. It was almost insulting, after everything she had planned, how careful she had been, that when Chase was finally picked up, it wasn't for murder. It was for something old, something petty, a forgotten shoplifting charge from her college days. A wallet lifted from a dressing room at a department store. $23 and some change. That was it. She was walking through a strip mall parking lot in Austin when the patrol car pulled up. No sirens, no dramatic takedown. Just an officer asking for her name and date of birth. She gave both, calmly, casually, and when they cuffed her, she didn't flinch. The officer told her it was routine. An old warrant. Wouldn't take long. It could have all ended right there. But the paperwork, well, the paperwork didn't agree with itself. Somewhere along the line, someone had typed the wrong birth year into the database. A 3 instead of a 5. The system flagged it as a mismatch. And that small detail, barely a keystroke, bought Chase her freedom. She was processed, held, then let go. She didn't wait around. That night, she sold her car for cash, well below value. No questions asked. Took the money and disappeared from every place that had ever known her. She left her apartment keys on the counter. Her phone in the trash behind a gas station. No notes. No calls. The next morning, she was in New York. Checked into a hotel under her sister's name. Used her ID and credit card to book the room. Her sister, who hadn't seen her in months and had no idea the card was missing, wouldn't notice the charges until much later. 2 days later, Chase was on a plane to Costa Rica. She had mapped it out in her head months before. Not the specifics, but the general direction. If she ever needed to vanish, Costa Rica felt right. Warm, quiet, no questions. She knew people who had traveled there, taught yoga on the beach, lived simple lives off the grid. And now, she would be one of them. Once she arrived, she stayed low for a while. Booked a small place inland. A room above a little shop with no English signage. No one knew her name. That was the point. But she knew she couldn't stay invisible forever. So, she changed. The surgery wasn't drastic. Just enough. She had her chin reshaped. Nose narrowed. Eyebrows lifted slightly. Combined with a new hair color and weight loss from stress and heat. Even those who had known her back home might have done a double take before saying her name. If they ever saw her again, she took on a new name. Picked one off a yoga mat label. Something clean, light, vaguely spiritual. Started teaching again. Slow classes. Breathing work. Beach sessions at sunrise. Her students adored her. They said she had an old soul. Said she radiated peace. She smiled at that. She told herself she was safe. But back in Texas, the silence was ending. Detectives had been working the case slowly. Carefully. They didn't have fingerprints. Didn't have direct witnesses. But they had something Chase hadn't considered. Digital footprints. They subpoenaed Colin's fitness app. The same one Chase had used to monitor his location. And what they found was revealing. Not just his movements, but hers. Because Chase had synced her own login to the app months ago. Forgotten, probably. But the data was still there. It showed her driving through the area on the exact night of Mo's death. Stopping. Parking for just under 40 minutes. Leaving. There was more. Surveillance footage. Blurry, yes, but time-stamped. Captured a vehicle that matched hers turning down the street near the home. A neighbor's security camera caught the same vehicle exiting later that night. Individually, each detail felt small. Together, they started to form something solid. Something undeniable. Back in Costa Rica, Chase stretched into downward dog as the sun rose over the horizon. Her class mirrored her movements, breathing in time. She looked peaceful, strong, unbothered. She didn't know her name had just been re-entered into an international law enforcement database. Didn't know a team in Texas had finally decided they were ready to knock on a few more doors. Didn't know the life she'd rebuilt was no longer hers to keep. And as the waves rolled in and her students exhaled, Chase Hartley believed, for one final morning, that the past was far behind her. She had no idea it was already catching up. She'd been careful, but not careful enough. They always say that time buys safety, that the longer you stay quiet, the longer you stay hidden, the more the world forgets. But Chase didn't understand yet. Some things grow louder with time. They echo. They stew. They call attention, no matter how far you run. 2 months passed. 2 long, golden months. Chase spent her mornings teaching yoga to wide-eyed travelers and wandering expats. Her afternoons eating fresh fruit under a striped umbrella. Her nights listening to the waves hit the shore with a kind of rhythm that could lull anyone into believing they'd started over. But back in the States, a different rhythm was unfolding. One made of keys clacking, warrants being signed, files moving across desks, calls being made in quiet tones. The U.S. Marshals have been watching. Not with urgency, but with patience. That kind of hunt doesn't need to be fast. It needs to be certain. Her mistake, in the end, was underestimating how many people remembered her face before the surgery. A man who worked at a surf shop. A woman who had met her in a group meditation class and later saw her photo on a crime podcast's Instagram post. The tip didn't sound urgent, just odd. She said her name was Clara. The woman wrote in a message. But something about her didn't add up. That was all they needed. They didn't kick down doors. No dramatic takedown. Just 3 agents waiting in the hallway of her studio apartment while the 4th knocked. She opened the door wearing a robe and holding a glass of watermelon juice. When they said her name, her real name, she paused. For just a second, like she was trying to decide whether to close the door or finish her sip. Then she smiled, set the glass down, turned around, placed her hands behind her back without a word. She was flown out of Costa Rica under heavy guard. The extradition took longer than expected. Paperwork delays. One of the agents said the trip felt less like law enforcement and more like escorting a ghost. No one spoke much. Chase stared out the window the entire flight. No crying, no questions, just silence, like she was saving whatever was left inside her for something that hadn't arrived yet. Back in Austin, it hit differently. She was no longer the woman who disappeared. She was the woman who came back in handcuffs, charged with first-degree murder. No bond, no tears. County jail became her new address. For 13 months, she sat in a fluorescent room with cracked tiles and metal toilets and women who didn't care who she used to be. The newspapers called her the yoga fugitive. The podcast said she was manipulative, cold, calculating. But the guards called her quiet, said she kept to herself, said she was always writing things down, filling up notebooks she refused to share. Then came the hospital visit. It wasn't scheduled, at least not publicly. A stomach issue, abdominal pain that turned out to be nothing serious. But it gave her an idea, or maybe it was an idea she'd always had, just waiting for the right door to open. The medical van made one stop. That was all it took. A loose handcuff, a distracted officer. And just like that, Chase Hartley made a run for it. She didn't get far. 2 blocks, maybe less. Barefoot, panting, her orange jumpsuit clinging to her legs like a bad dream. She cut through a parking lot and tried to scale a fence, but it was too high. Too late. The marshals had her down in 30 seconds. There was no screaming, just a grunt, and a laugh from one of the officers who muttered, she really thought she could Houdini her way out twice. After that, no more vans. No more unsupervised visits. She was labeled a flight risk. High security. The courtroom looked like a theater that day. Cameras. Reporters. Sketch artists drawing her like she was some celebrity villain out of a movie. Chase stood in a gray suit that didn't quite fit, hands folded, her eyes fixed straight ahead. When the sentence was read, she didn't blink. 90 years. No possibility of parole until at least 75 had passed. For a moment, it seemed like she was calculating the math in her head. Then she smiled, just barely, as if 90 years felt like a challenge she'd take on, not a life she'd lost. She was let out through the side door. No goodbyes, no parting words. And somewhere, far from the courthouse, the waves still rolled against the Costa Rican shore. But Chase Hartley would never hear them again. It's strange, isn't it? How a life can veer so far off course, and yet look ordinary in the beginning. A yoga instructor, a relationship, a quiet town. From the outside, nothing screamed danger. No one suspected that beneath the routines and rituals, something was already unraveling. Not loudly, not violently. Chase Hartley wasn't born a killer. No one is. But piece by piece, through jealousy, through secrets, through a deep, gnawing need to hold on to something that was already gone, she became one. The line between suspicion and obsession is thinner than we like to admit. And once you cross it, you don't just see differently. You act differently. You believe things that no one can talk you out of. And sometimes you don't come back from that place. From yoga mats to prison walls. From morning meditations to late-night confrontations. This wasn't just a fall. It was a full descent. And the most chilling part, it never felt like a horror movie. It felt like real life. Because it was. Thanks for walking through this story with me. You've been watching Vic's Crime Stories. If this case left you thinking, if it stayed with you long after the screen went dark, then you're in the right place. So go ahead, subscribe. Stay with us. There's more to come. Until next time, stay safe. Stay alert. And remember, the scariest stories are the ones that could happen to anyone.